Hey everyone. Okay, I've been messing around a lot with data tables, or just sort of fiddling around with it to figure out a workflow that makes sense. I think I have something, but I'm gonna make some observations about it, uh, about the process, and it makes me wonder. It makes me wonder if whoever designed the data tables wasn't really planning on using them for anything. Okay, so let me get started. Here, I'll explain it because it's like one of those features that looks really cool. It's like on paper, this is a great feature, but in practice, it's like fundamentally broken. Why not just add one extra step that would have made the entire thing infinitely more useful? Okay, I'll explain the main problem. So here's the hierarchy if you're looking all the way down in this lower left side of the screen. Uh, I have my inventory. This is sort of set up exactly like the looter shooter. All right. So you'll notice that I have like a folder with all the different types of armors and everything like that, and I'll go into that. So I have item base. Okay. Now item base is nothing more now than a base. Don't look at this. A base entity that just has these variables in it. Okay. So this is for stat modification. When you equip the armor, it multiplies your max health, your max MP, your max attack and defense by these variables, right? So on the character, every time a change is made to your inventory, equipment, and potions that you drink and everything like that, it has to account for this and go and iterate through an array that's located on the character. I'm not even touching any of that stuff. I'm just saying that that's theoretically how this would work. That's the basic concept. So you'll notice that I can't really do anything in here in item base, and the reason why is because uh, when you get a data table row, this can't be a variable. Now I said this before. What the hell? I said this before, but what that means in simple terms is I can't do anything with this variable. I can only assign it to one thing, and that's it. Now, it's pretty nice because it knows once you assign it, it gives you this little drop down thing, and this can be a variable. I can do something with this. I can get item ID, and I can plug that in, and now I can have a whole bunch of different things that points to that. But the data table itself, I can't do anything with it. So because of this one limitation, I have to do all kinds of weird stuff. Because if this one limitation didn't exist, all I would need is item base. That's it. And I would just have two variables, like boom, like that. And I'd be able to make a child object, create a child, and that child object, all I would have to do is go to its variables, uh, attributes, and it would be like, here's the row, and here's the table, and then I could spit out maybe 20 or 30 of these things in like 5 seconds, and boom, there you go. Like that would have been it. I would not have had to do anything special, and everything would all just be set up, and it would all just read right directly from it. It would just be one base file with a whole bunch of files associated. Now, because of this limitation, I have to do some other stuff, and maybe I should wait a little while until maybe that one thing is changed, but maybe not. I don't know. All I know is that it's like the next version. They had like this version of the editor. They had 70 pages of changes and fixes and features added or some shit like that, right? 70 pages. Apparently, making these things fundamentally useful was not one of the features. But okay, so let's get around. Let's just say let's work with what we got. All right? It's not that bad actually. It's just a little weird. So, I got stat attributes, all right, and then I have stat modifications. So this thing is basically all the variables that are going to be for all of the different types of items are just going to basically be stored as regular variables right on item base. Not a big deal. It works. I I imagine this is still a lot better than depending on those goddamn structs that were like making my life hell. So the first thing I thought was, well, what I'll do is I'll make a child class of this, and that's what we're looking at here. Now that I have this child class, I go right in the construction script. I'll just point to a function right off of item base, right? Well, I called it init data armor because maybe I'll just have to have a whole bunch of different functions. Init data armor, init data weapons, init data potions, init data, and that's it. And like each of these I'll have to specify the row. I could do that. Every child that I make can just have a new ID for the row name, and it'll just do everything that it needs to do, right? Well, that being a class that's located on the item base, I thought that would make the most sense, right? Well, unfortunately, even with show inherited variables and stuff, I don't see the function here. Um, uh, Let me try init. Okay, there you go. This actually, I'm learning even while I'm recording this that maybe this will work actually. Okay, wow, that actually makes things a little bit better. See, I'm still figuring this shit out as I'm going, but this actually kind of just makes things a little bit more straightforward. So what I was doing a moment ago was I was actually doing a init data item armor. What is this thing called? Is a function library, and thankfully this is not necessary. I don't need this. All right, cool. Fuck it, get out of here. You're worthless to me, function library. So that's that. Okay. So I have my data table, and here's all of the worn armor types, right? And then I could do like Berserker, and I could do suits for Berserker and Enduring. I could do all the naming styles that I did in the looter shooter already, and kind of follow that, and they can all modify your stats. This is not meant to be for the looter shooter itself. This is just an example of a workflow. So this is, yeah, but this works pretty well. I might actually go to the extra extent of making it so like helmets, body, legs, boots, and gloves are separate. But basically, in here, this isn't necessary because thankfully that function can be grabbed, and this is just the row. So right now the row is none by default here, right? But if I make a child object called helmets, item armor worn helmet, right? So I can go to the data table, I select worn helmet, I grab this, then I do this, and I find the attributes and set that to worn helmet. There it is. That's it. Now I have a worn helmet that's just sitting here. So I have to move this to helmet. Move, and then fix up redirects. Okay, so from this, I can just duplicate and I can do all of the different helmet types. And all I have to do now is modify this item ID. And the item ID will set up all of this. I almost kind of wish that like the item ID was the only thing sitting there, or the only variable that I can just look at. That would make it a little bit more convenient. But for the most part, not so bad. I can kind of deal with this. And I think that's the workflow that I'm going to go with. The only complication really is this weird step that you have to do in item base where you go init data armor, and I'll probably do a duplicate init data weapons, right? And then that'll have another folder with all the different weapons, and then I'll have a init data potions, right? Init data. See, even though the item base class, this item base thing is just one object, it's going to have variables that are relevant to all of the different types of items in the entire thing. So I have to be careful how I organize these. So stat modification might be for potions will be used theoretically in somewhat the same way that it'll be used with armor, and maybe I'll have weapons that increase your attack power if you equip them, or and things like that. But this will also have variables that are specific to your guns that are sitting here too. So like the weapons, rate of fire, all that stuff. So there's going to be a huge number of variables just hanging out in here, and I wonder if that's going to end up being a problem. Is that wasteful? Is that something that I shouldn't really be doing? That's a question that I'd like to have answered, and I think that pretty much sums up this video. If this workflow seems like something that would be useful for, I can release it. If it's something that seems logical, then let me know. If I'm using this completely incorrectly, I'd like to know. But otherwise, I think that this makes the most sense to me. Only one step that's a little bit out there, and that's really not that bad, honestly. It's I don't think it's that bad, right? The only catch is that there's just going to be a ton of variables in here because like when you look at the weapons, weapons end up having a lot of variables. Like I almost kind of feel like weapons should be a different thing because the number of variables that weapons need, like from accuracy to like from rate of fire, hit accuracy, damage, whether or not they explode, whether or not they penetrate the target, whether or not, like, compared to like a piece of armor, armor barely needs any stats at all, like barely. All right, it just needs a model that you hook up or an icon, and like what the stats are gonna be used to modify your thing, like when you equip it. But weapons are a whole fucking ball of wax, and like in the original looter shooter example, I made sure that weapons were actually a separate thing, but I didn't know if that was really a good idea. But it's like, can you imagine? Can you imagine the number of variables, and you see like all of the different items in the entire game being like 10% of the variables, and then you got weapons, and it's just like ridiculous. Yeah. So, all right. Well, with that in mind, I think I'm pretty much that's that. All right. Thanks for watching. I hope this was somewhat informative, or at least face palming. Like, dude, why are you doing it that way? Stop. Or something. It's just, I don't know. Well, I guess with that said, I may actually seriously redo the entire project. I'm really leaning in the direction of just doing it because I think I have such a better grasp of what to do this time that if I was to do it a second time, it would be way better. But I'm wondering if that, a lot of people screw up by starting over just because they think it's, something's not perfect is not an excuse to start over. A lot of people get stuck in that, and I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be like that. You know, that's that. It's, oh well, if you don't do it in C++, then it's not perfect, and then they write it in C++, and they're like, oh, it sucks like this, and then eventually, 10 years later, never made a game. No game. Really good at programming, no game. So yeah, that's that. Anyway, all right, I'm done. All right, for real this time. Hope you enjoyed. Take care.